In this video article, we're going to look at David Morrell's self-dialogue technique, but we're going to look at adapting it for brainstorming short stories rather than long-form fiction, which is how he uses it. So, before we get started, if you want to get an email with a timestamped overview every time I release a new video, then head over to my website at deliberate-practice.com. Sign up for my email list. There's other content at that website, and I'll be adding some more there soon too. Plus, there'll be some thank you goodies for email-only subscribers in the weeks and months to come. So go and do that, and let's dive in. So it is Thursday, the 28th of August, 2025. 2 days ago, I did a video article on David Morrell's self-dialogue technique. This is a technique that he uses before he starts a new long-form project, and he uses this instead of traditional outlining or brainstorming. And what it is, it's a long-form dialogue with his typewriter. So he'll have a persona for his typewriter, and his persona will say, "Good morning, David, how are you?" And he'll say, "I'm very good, thank you. I've got an idea that I'd like to talk about." And then the typewriter will say, "Great, what's this idea about?" And then what they do is they explore it, they explore details of the story. I say they, obviously it's not two people, it's him acting for his typewriter, but it explores details of stories, characters, settings, and basically creates a record of the creative process that he goes through in coming up with detailed ideas. And he goes, and what he suggests is the primary benefit of this method is that the document you come up with has much more nuance and depth than if you do a traditional kind of plot outlining kind of thing, where it's very surface level and very much just to do with the plot events rather than characters, thematic things, settings, how settings can reflect themes in certain places, things like that. So go and watch that video. I'll link it in the video below. But the question I had for myself was, would this work for short stories? Because at this point in time, I want to be writing more short stories. Over time, I will expand that to novellas, and then I'll go to long form writing. And I don't envisage that happening for a year. There's several reasons why that would be on the scope of this video article. So that's what I want to do. And I had an idea of how to use this self-dialogue technique, but done slightly differently. Technology's moved on since David Morrell probably started doing this when he was using an electric typewriter. And also it would be a little less schizophrenic. If you've seen the video I did on the 3 things writers shouldn't use AI for, then you might have an idea of what I'm about to share with you. And so the modification I made to David Morrell's process was using AI as my dialogue partner. This, in my opinion, is pretty much the best use case of AI for any creative tasks where you're getting it to act as a brainstorm partner. I would say just as a total aside to this video, a sidebar if you like, I've been exploring AI and using AI to create and code apps, and that's starting to look very interesting as well. But for writers, you should be using, or you can use, AI as a creative brainstorming partner. There's some caveats which will come in the next screen that can help guide you with this process. I think it's the best use of AI for writers. So let's go and look at these caveats which will help make the process smoother when you do it. So the first caveat is to tell the AI that it is not to suggest any story details unless you, the writer, explicitly ask for those story details. So when you're doing this, if you're ever worried that AI might suggest things that have come from other people's stories or that are very generic, which it will do, because the trend of AI is it trends to the average, and with the training data it's been trained on, that training data has not been weighted so that something from acclaimed masters gets the same weighting as something that's a piece of shit written by some hack somewhere for $20, and it assesses those in the same way. So AI will always, unless carefully guided, will always veer to very average results. So don't ask it for any story details. Also, that ensures that all the story details you come up with are from your story brain. The second caveat, you tell it that its job is simply to ask questions that, when you answer them, they force you to think deeply about your story before you start writing. So some of the questions that I got asked when I did this process on Tuesday night were things like, what single scene would contain the essence of the story? Another question I got was, does this character's backstory, is it needed in this story, or can it just be alluded to, or just be something that you, the author, know? I got asked for a one-line summary of the story, and several things that really made me have to think deeply about the story that I was thinking about and planning. But you must make it clear to the AI that that's what its job is. And then that leaves you to work through some of the wrinkles. And if you've got it set up correctly, you'll come up with some answers, and it will say, well, yeah, that's okay, but why is that important? And I've got a workflow document with a bunch of questions that the AI uses. So you do get these questions, and they force you to consider detail that perhaps you haven't considered yet, and force you to go deeper with the story idea before you even write the first line of the story. More AI caveats. Don't just go to your AI and say, I want to do this. Instead, what you need to do is create a detailed workflow, upload that, and then tell the AI that it's to work as a brainstorming partner, and it's going to use that workflow as a guide in the process. And that's whenever you're doing any kind of brainstorming with AI, that's what you need to do, is you need to come up with a document and give that to the AI for it to work from. It's a bit like giving a partner a script, but the AI can do a bit of processing and be a bit more creative than a partner who didn't know anything about writing perhaps would be. And to reiterate, if you create this workflow and make sure the AI is just asking you questions and it's not suggesting any story details, you ensure all the ideas you generate in these sessions are coming from your story brain. So it's a really interesting process, and I think this is one of the best use for AI for writers that exists. Now, you're probably wondering, did it work? Did I come up with a story? And the answer to that is an emphatic yes. I used a story idea that has been mulling around in my brain, and I had certain scenes that I wanted to include. And I decided on Tuesday, after I filmed the video article, that I would try this process out for short stories with this idea and see what happened. And I was very pleasantly surprised with the results. I got some details into the story that I'd never thought of. The opening totally changed, and the opening now is much more effective and makes much more sense to the overall story. So I was really pleased with the process. I will say answering some of the questions was hard. What I would recommend if you're doing this is try and be in some kind of flow state. So when you're answering, you're not doing any analysis in terms of, oh, I spelt that word wrong, I better correct that. Anything like that. You're not worried about formatting. You're not worried about that. You're just answering the questions as quickly as you can. And by doing that, you're trying to access the deep part of the brain and get to the creative part of the brain, which is why you don't want to correct spellings or anything like that, because that's the analytical front part of the brain that you don't want to be involved. So answering some of the questions was hard, but it was really worthwhile. And those questions forced me to go deep into the story to find the essence. So now I feel, and it's not an outline in any way, shape or form. I could turn it into an outline, but it's just a document with my thoughts on it. I feel that given a couple of hours of peace and quiet, which means telling my grown-up children to bugger off somewhere, maybe giving them a tenner each and saying, go and have a couple of pints in the pub, given 2 hours reading through the notes that I took, or the notes that I made in response to the questions I was asked, I think I could probably sit down and write this story in one sitting now. And what's an interesting byproduct, which Morrell kind of touched upon in the research I did on how he uses the process, but so he talked about if you go through this document and you make it, and then something happens and you can't get to this project for 2 years, when you come back to the project in 2 years, you can pick it up by just reading through, and that brings you back up to speed. And I read through the document when I'd finished, and I think if I don't think about that story for a week and then start it in a week, but read that document first, that document will help push me into flow, and I'll be able to hit the ground running. So yeah, so it's a really interesting process. And a key point that I'll reiterate: provided you restrict your AI to questions designed for brainstorming and ban it from suggesting story material, you can be sure the story is 100% yours. So if you publish it on Amazon, and there's now in the self-publishing guidelines on the second screen when you upload your content and everything in the KDP site, you get asked a question: did you use AI to generate the story? And so using it for brainstorming isn't something Amazon's interested in, so you can truthfully answer no, and know that the story is 100% yours, and there'll be things in it that AI would never in a million years have come up with. So really interesting process. And if you hang on to the next screen, something that I'm going to do as soon as this video is rendering, associated with the writing vault that I'm putting together, you might want to wait and just hear that. So closing out, remember, every writer needs to find their own process. If this process works for you, that's brilliant. If it doesn't, okay, it's not the end of the world. It's something that you can add to your list of things that don't work, although you may find 1 or 2 things in it that work for you and you can add to your process. I mentioned the writing vault. The URL's there. It's a resource I'm putting together for aspiring and or frustrated fiction writers. The minute that this video starts rendering, I've just created a workflow document based on all the work I did with David Morrell's. It's all in one project in Claude, which is the AI I use. And I asked Claude to create a workflow document, and I'm going to put that into the writing vault, so anyone who's in there can copy and paste that, go to their AI of choice, and immediately start this process. It will take them less than 2 minutes to get started with a detailed workflow that I've proven to work. Yes, tweaks can be made to it, and I will suggest to people who download it or copy and paste it that they should put in their own tweaks, but the document will be there. Yes, you can make your own document, but this is ready to go. It costs $1 for 10 days to check out the writing vault. Basically, the first 10 days are on me, but I have to charge $1 so that we keep the bots out and the spammers out. And after that, it's $7 a month. If you just want to use it for 10 days, get this workflow and use it. That's fine with me. But do go and check out what I've written about it and what it is. There's a overview screen capture video walking through things in the vault, which I'll update in a week or so because it changes literally every day. Or if you've got questions about it, just send those questions to me at paul@deliberate-practice.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So that's it for this video. This has been a really interesting process for me. I'm definitely going to be doing it again. Definitely using this in some way, shape or form as part of my writing process going forward, and no doubt I'll be updating and amending and tweaking the workflow, and every time I do that, the updates will go in the writing vault along with all the other stuff that's in there. So thank you for your time with this video, and I'll catch you in the next video.